We have big news here. The MiG Switch Update 1.2. Flashcarts are now working on the Nintendo Switch 2. The team behind the MiG Switch Flashcart, also known as the MiG Flash V2, has released a new firmware update 1.2 that allows the device to function on the Nintendo Switch 2. This update dropped on June 14, 2025. This enables the MiG cartridge to load and play original Switch 1 game backups on the new Nintendo Switch 2 console. The MiG developer officially confirmed the Switch 2 compatibility after some initial issues. The product's website even advertises it as compatible with Switch 2, and recent demos have been appearing online. In other words, barely a week after the Switch 2's launch, this flashcart has effectively opened the door for backward compatibility on unmodified hardware, letting users run their Switch 1 game ROMs on the new system. Community confirms with video proof. Early adopters in the console hacking community have verified that MiG V 1.2 does work on the Switch 2. On forums like Reddit and GBA Temp, users report successfully loading games. These community testimonials indicate that the update isn't just theoretical. People are actively testing the MiG on the Switch 2 and confirming that it does run Switch 1 games as advertised. Proof is also emerging in the form of videos. This kind of video proof has helped convince skeptics like myself, especially since these were rumors that are now debunked, that inserting the MiG cart into the Switch 2 could cause errors or even breaks. With multiple users and creators showcasing successful result, the consensus is that Firmware 1.2 truly delivers Switch 2 support. You might be asking, what are MiG Switch carts? MiG Switch carts are a type of flash cart, a cartridge-shaped device with a micro SD slot that can store multiple game files, also called ROMs. They function by impersonating an official game cartridge, tricking the console into launching games from the micro SD as if they were legit physical game cards. This concept is very similar to the old R4 cards used on the Nintendo DS, like the R4. The MiG Flashcart lets you put game ROMs onto a memory card and then play those games on the console without having any hardware modifications. The MiG Flash V2, formerly called MiG Switch, was first unveiled in 2024 as the first plug-and-play flashcart for the Nintendo Switch. It even comes with a separate MiG dumper tool that allows users to back up their own game cartridges onto SDs, meaning a user can copy their genuine game and load copies via the MiG cart. A flashcart like this is marketed as a convenience for game backups. You can carry one cartridge that contains digital backups of all your games, saving you from swapping games and bringing your whole library on the go. Of course, the MiG cart also enables piracy in practice. By allowing any Switch game ROM to run on any console, it can be used to play games you don't own, not just your own backups. This puts in a legal gray area. The device itself doesn't contain copyrighted data, but it facilitates loading copied games. MiG Flashcarts essentially cosplay as a real Switch game cartridge, complete with a tiny button to cycle between loaded games, and the Switch console sees it as if it were an authentic game card. This plug-and-play nature requires no custom firmware or mod chip, and it is why this MiG Flashcart is drawing so much attention. It's an easy piracy backup tool that works on unmodified Switch and Switch 2 consoles now. Using the MiG Switch Flashcart on any Nintendo console comes with serious safety risks, especially when it comes to online connectivity. Nintendo equips each official game cartridge with a unique identifier, or a certificate. If the same game ID is ever observed on two different consoles online, or in any suspicious pattern, Nintendo's system will flag it as likely a pirated copy. A MiG cart by design can load copies of games, and unless every single user only ever plays backups of their games they own personally and never runs two copies of the same game simultaneously, there's a high chance of duplicate ID showing up in Nintendo's telemetry. In the past, users of the MiG on the original Switch reported getting bans even when they were using their own game dumps, indicating that simply using the flashcart offline might still leave telltale logs that log in a ban once the console connects to online. Nintendo Switch's software is known to quietly log all game activities and send it to Nintendo's server on the next time you go online, so even playing a backup in airplane mode won't guarantee safety. Once flagged, the consequences include an account ban or a console ban, or both. Users in the community are already warning to avoid mixing pirated games or unknown ROMs on the MiG, as those certainly trigger bans when the system checks for valid licenses. At this early stage, it's unclear if using only genuine self-dumped games via the MiG on the Switch 2 might evade Nintendo's detection. Some are hopeful, but most advise extreme caution, essentially assuming you will get banned if you use the MiG on the Switch 2 that ever connects to the internet. Nintendo's detection methods are quite sophisticated. They can detect unusual behavior, such as games running from a cartridge ID that doesn't match any official manufactured carts, or the same ID pinging from multiple devices. The company has spent years combating 3DS and Switch piracy using telemetry and server-side checks, and this continues with the Switch 2. In short, using the MiG Flashcart is a big gamble. It might be fine offline, but the minute you connect online, you're playing with fire. Community members flatly state that the Flashcart will get you banned. It's not intended for piracy. At least not if you care about online play or the console's future connectivity. The fact that the MiG Switch carts now work on the Switch 2 has major implications for both game preserving and piracy. On one hand, it provides a method for legitimate users to continue playing their Switch 1 library on the new console without having to carry dozens of game cards around. It essentially offers an unofficial backward compatibility. Pop in the MiG cart loaded with your own games, and your entire library is at your fingertips on the new hardware. For those who have large collections of games, this is an appealing convenience, and it could be argued as fair use if you own the games. On the other hand, the piracy angle is impossible to ignore. A flash cart that lets you play virtually any Switch game for free, assuming you attain the ROM. On a brand new console just a week after its launch is a nightmare scenario for Nintendo's business. It could undercut game sales, especially resales or enhanced Switch 2 versions of old titles, and it defeats any security measures Nintendo puts in place to protect their software on the new system. Users are also reporting that they're using their original game backups and then downloading the new updated version on the Switch 2, and it seems to be working. Nintendo is almost certainly going to respond aggressively. The company has a long history of defending its platform against unauthorized devices and content. Already, Nintendo bans consoles from online play if they detect modding or piracy, something that did happen with my Switch 1. With the Switch 2, Nintendo appears to have doubled down. Their latest user agreement in some regions explicitly warns that they reserve the right to remotely disable or brick a console that is found to be running unauthorized applications or accessories. While it's unclear if Nintendo would actively go as far as bricking devices, the very threat shows how seriously they take this. At the very least, we can expect a firmware update on the Switch 2 aimed at detecting and blocking flashcards. It's a cat and mouse game. The MiG team has managed to bypass the Switch 2's initial protections with this update, but Nintendo could push a patch that could block the loophole. In fact, some observers were surprised that the Switch 2 didn't already come blocked, as the MiG Switch has been around since the original Nintendo Switch. Beyond technical measures, Nintendo's legal team will likely keep pressure on MiG's distributions. MiG Flashcarts aren't sold in regular stores. They're available via sketchy websites and from resellers. And these sites reportedly keep moving or going offline, likely due to Nintendo's takedown efforts. In the past, Nintendo has pursued legal lawsuits against flashcart makers. For example, the R4 cards for the DS were banned in some countries after legal action. The makers of MiG could face similar legal challenges or import restrictions. Already, MiG's official website presence has been inconsistent. The device was initially thought to be a scam by some because it only appeared in YouTube videos and took months to ship. It's clear the product exists now, but Nintendo will do everything possible to limit its reach. They wanted to prevent a scenario where the Switch 2 is wide open for piracy from day one. In summary, MiG Switch's 1.2 update has effectively made the Switch 2 the fastest jailbroken Nintendo console in history by enabling playback of previous gen games via a flashcart almost immediately after its launch. It's a remarkable development for the modding community and a boon for anyone hoping to carry their library forward, or for those willing to partake in piracy. However, the risks are enormous. If you're using MiG on a Switch 2, you're likely tying that console to offline only use, because going online with it could get you banned or worse. Nintendo will undoubtedly respond, whether through software updates, ban, or any legal crackdown to protect their new system. As always with these kinds of exploits, it's a cat and mouse game, and right now MiG has a small head start, but users should weigh whether the convenience or the illicit free games is worth potentially losing access to Nintendo's online services or voiding their warranty. For the general Switch 2 owner, the advice from the community is to approach very carefully, or just avoid it entirely, unless you fully understand the consequences. In the coming weeks, we'll see if Nintendo issues firmware patches or starts banning accounts en masse. But one thing is certain, they are not going to take this sitting down. So let me know what you think about this MiG Flash V2. Are you going to get one? Have you been looking at one? I know I've been eyeing one up since the original Switch, but I never bit the bullet. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below, if you think this was a good thing, a bad thing, or how you think this will play out. I look forward to your responses. Also, like and subscribe to this video. If you're new, I'm going to be releasing new information in regards to the Switch 2 modding and things like this flashcard. So if this sounds right up your alley, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification. And I'll be sure to update you once I hear new things.